Elysa Roberts. I'm so thrilled to welcome you to the University for Life Coach Training faculty. Welcome.
Hi, Queen Madam Susan Hyatt. I am delighted to be here. Honestly, this is probably one of my greatest opportunities.
Well, I'm flattered for you to say that because you're quite accomplished. One of the reasons that we were dying to have you be part of this faculty is because you are a certified coach, but you're also a college professor. So let's talk a little bit about your experience and let the people know what it is you bring to the table in terms of your credentials.
Yeah, I am certified. I'm a Bear certified coach, and I'm also certified through the Life Purpose Institute as a life purpose and career coach.
Mhm.
So I did that back in the early 2000s and used to refer to myself as a life architect because I felt like I was the keeper of my client's vision for what they really wanted. Kind of like the architect kind of like helps you, the homeowner, like design what you want, but then they kind of divide out the roles and you have to do some things yourself. You got to go shop and pick your shit and then you got to, do a lot of those. So I just felt like I was really this keeper of individuals' vision. And my passion for coaching actually grew out of my practice as an occupational therapist, which is really where my professional foundation lies. I became an occupational therapist back in the early 90s. Chose a different path than becoming a physician. I wanted to really help people with arts and crafts was what I thought. In the end, OT became a bit too much like illness remediation, and I wanted to be a health promoter. So I went back for my PhD. So my PhD is in occupational therapy with an emphasis on something called occupational science, which is the science of humans as what we call occupational beings. So humans are driven to engage in meaningful activity. And what we do and how, and doing can even be being, like meditation. What we do affects our health and wellness, for better or worse. If we do decide to eat and nourish ourselves, we can thrive. If we decide to restrict ourselves and never eat, we end up sick. So through my experience of going back and learning how to be a health promoter, I learned about coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I also got the opportunity to teach into occupational therapy and kind of ended up stepping into teaching my future colleagues more so than staying in full-time practice. So for the past 20 years, I have been teaching my future colleagues. And I think that's what I'm so excited about this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was put on this planet, or I decided to inhabit this being to teach healers, to teach my kind, to teach, in this case, I've been teaching occupational therapists, and I'm now winding that down so that I can teach my fellow coaches.
Right.
So I feel like it is absolutely, I'm well equipped from my background of helping people overcome, physical and mental health conditions, to then step into their own power when I was practicing my life architecture, to now, to teaching my future colleagues to go out and to make best practice, to make what's best practice today, standard practice tomorrow. That's really what I try to teach my students. And I would just love to be doing that. And I'm looking forward to doing that with coaches.
Oh my God, I love that. So that being said, like that philosophy of best practice today is standard tomorrow is really part of the reason why I started this university. I wasn't thinking of it and saying it in that way, but like, our goal is to have the best trained coaches in the marketplace who also are looking at helping their clients through a DEI lens and being able to come to the table to coach a wide variety of clients and have context and understanding about how to do that. And so, what about being part of this mission excites you?
I think what excites me about really being part of what I see you taking a stand for, and to me that the word advocate in Latin means to stand beside, to be called to stand beside. And I
Mhm.
think I've known you enough, and I know who you hang with, that to see you shifting to be able to offer an opportunity for the system to change, because the way that I see what's happening in our world is, and what I teach in occupational science, is that it's the contextual and structural factors. It's the things around a human. It's the systems around a human that constrains or marginalizes or alienates someone from engaging in what's meaningful to them. So to create a university and a way for coaches to understand the system that they're living in, and to be able to influence change on it, that's creating a new future. I mean, I don't have kids, so my legacy is through who I teach, and it's through my graduates. And it's, so for me, this is um, a way to be stepping into serving society on a much larger scale than I've been able to do in a university. So
Mhm.
it's it kind of makes me all, verklempt, as they
Me
say.
too. Listening to you, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that it to like think that I can be part of, a global movement, a societal shift in how coaches represent. And even if coaches still coach people who look like them or seem like them, for them to just have that context, to understand the system and the layers around us, the environment, that is literally, it's going to change the DNA of society. And I think I'd like us all to be put out of work. Like, that's what I've always thought, is that
Right.
if the world were really an equitable place, not equal, equitable, accessible, then none of us we'd all just be,
Right.
thrive. So yeah, I'm excited to represent in the way that I can, and to be open to the example of, wrestling with DEI
Mhm.
own experience.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so
Amazing. Oh my God. So good. Okay. So my next question is, um, if I were to say to you, I've asked all the instructors this, you can choose your top two topics to teach on.
oh,
And I know that's hard, but like, what would you pick?
oh gosh, what would I pick if I had to choose what I'd want to teach? I think what I really am fascinated by is you have to know your why. So whatever I teach, I think I would love to be teaching really like the philosophy of coaching in a way, the concept of what coaching is different than all the other, than therapy, or than, fix it, and, other things. I think I would want to teach a class on like the philosophy of coaching. And what I mean by that is that we have to understand both the theory of it and its intentions, and we have to understand the practical aspect. So I've been teaching for 20 something years, clinical reasoning, we call it. And so I would love to teach a course on like coaching reasoning,
Hmm.
how you really understand the ethics and the philosophy of this thing that's called coaching, which is different than these other professionals.
Mhm.
How do you enact that? So what are the key ways to actually apply this philosophy of coaching? That would be one class if I could invent one.
I'm
And
like hired.
and then let's see, a second class. Well, okay, first, in that class on the philosophy of coaching, or maybe a module in it, particularly for coaches who are coming into our university who have backgrounds in therapy or counseling or even teaching
Mhm.
or coaching sport. I got the opportunity to study and take a foundations course in something like this a gajillion years ago now. But the idea and what the coaching tool that I think has been most challenging for me to learn is to manage the fixer in me. And I think that we need to find a way to check ourselves as coaches. So I think that plays into the DEI thing too. It's check ourselves before we wreck ourselves is like a phrase I must say 56 times in a 4-week class with my students now, when we are looking at privilege and when we were looking at being a health promoter with individuals who are different than us and who might be more marginalized. So I feel like the philosophy of coaching and or the manage the fixer in you.
So good. I'm like, can I take that right now? Because I was just like thinking of all the things that have come up even this week that I noticed. I'm like, don't do that. Like, don't do that. That's not what you need. That's not how you can be most helpful. Like, solving this problem for them is not how you can be most helpful.
I think it's important to have a credential of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Part of why I didn't call myself a life coach when I was doing life architecture is I felt like it was watering down the profession that or as I saw coaching as a profession that stands on its own. And I didn't want to water that down because in those days, anybody could call themselves a coach. Well, even in these days, a hairdresser could call themselves a lifestyle coach, right? Yeah, there's a degree now at a university here, but it's coaching psychology. So it's very much, again, kind of getting into people's heads. And it's, to me, doesn't manage the fixer as much. But yeah, that was a coaching tool that we were taught from the Life Purpose Institute that is by far the toughest for me to enact, yet one of the most important ones. What else you got for me?
So I think the potential coach trainees that watch this, so let's say I'm like, hired, teach those 2 classes. I mean, you're already hired, but like, yes, go teach those 2
Well,
classes.
there's 1,000 others, we can talk about like, all the reasons that people are marginalized and alienated and all of that stuff, all the stigma out there and all that blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And
those classes are happening for sure.
yeah.
But what is it that you think you bring to the topics? What do you bring to the virtual classroom, if you will, that's uniquely Dr. Elysa Roberts?
Okay. What I bring, I've actually went through and reviewed my course evals over the last 20 years for themes to figure out what is my unique gifts and talents. What do I bring to the classroom? And some of the common phrases or things that I bring to the classroom that my graduates have said is a passion for what I stand for, and a passion for them being the best, whatever they can be. They are my future colleagues. So I bring this passion for really having individuals see and be their potential. And I think where that comes from is I spent far too many decades hovering in that imposter syndrome land myself and holding myself back and playing small. And so my why is I never want anyone to feel like a misfit or an imposter. So I bring into that classroom this space of meeting people where they are and taking them farther. And I guess I have this capacity to empathize for how uncomfortable it can be in a classroom and how scary it can be to fear being called on. And at the same time, wanting to create a safe place for students to ask questions, to admit they don't understand something, to challenge me. So I guess I really bring passion. I bring empathy. I bring a lived experience of being a complete scaredy cat, back of the room kid in the classroom to actually standing in front of the class and leading it. So I guess I bring this lived experience of what's possible, and passion and enthusiasm for what we're here to do, and for what our students are going to go forth into the world. Our graduates are going to go forth into the world and, you know, kick the shit out of crap out there.
I get so feeling out of you. I'm like, yes, I'm so excited. Well, thank you for taking the time to look
Yes.
to let the people know who they're getting.
Yeah, I think this is going to be so fun.